This will probably be the last lesson on Rails, or the last planned lesson, but feel free to come up if you have any suggestions for anything else that you'd like covered. So this basic app is, or the app idea basically is that it's going to be for companies, so startups and companies, so Silicon Valley or just around the world, and they want to keep some materials secret. So they want to have stuff that their employees could access, but the other employees of other companies that are on that system, they have absolutely no access to. So just kick off creating this app. I just called it Top Secret. And the usual suspects, no standard testing and Postgres database. So I'm just going to open that up, and then I'm going to install RSpec. So that'll be my first commit, init rails with RSpec. So here's a database schema that I worked out for this system. Going to have a users table. Each user is going to have their own email address. We're going to have a companies table, and the company might have a name, maybe other information, but just trying to keep it simple. And then users will be able to be part of companies by this join table here, company members, company ID and user ID, connecting that relationship between users and companies. And then finally, we're going to have documents, and these are just very, very simple. We're just sort of plain text documents. So all we have is a company ID that it belongs to, and the content of the document. And also what I ended up adding was just a name for the document. That seemed to make sense. So this is what I planned out in DB Designer. However, I came up with a different system, so it ended up not needing this join table here, because I decided that users with their email addresses, so if they were at tesla.com, and if this company here said that they own the domain tesla.com, then that would be the connection that would say, okay, well, that user is now part of that company. So this is what I planned, but decided to do something slightly different. So I think I've got it just here. So there's my database schema, the original one. However, instead of planning it out a bit more, came up with a different system. So I'll just update this schema, maybe I'll just duplicate this top secret to. So the company is going to have a domain. And that domain is just basically the bit that comes after the @ symbol in email addresses. That means I can delete this whole table here. And so instead it's going to do these smarts, bob@tesla.com. If there's a company with the domain tesla.com, that means that Bob works for Tesla and he's able to see all of Tesla's documents. So I just thought this was a simpler system. So you can see this mapped out here. The email, it's going to be unique across users. Device does that for you. We're going to have a company with a name and this domain thing. So, e.g. tesla.com. This might be e.g. bob@tesla.com. This we'll get to in a moment. But the real important thing is this document here. That's what our app actually stores. This is the sort of main part of our app. Companies can share documents with their employees, but no other companies can see their secrets. So because we're going to need an email, like a user model, I'm going to use devise. So devise, throw that into Google, and the top hit is that gem. Gives you an idea of how popular it is. Probably just update readme with plan, since I've made those changes there. Anyone just need to catch up before I continue on? What, sorry? Oh, yeah. I can even post it into Slack if you want. Just put this in challenges. So where do I make this public? So next I'm going to install devise. If you want to get this README, it's in the challenges channel. Install devise, so gem file, bundle. Generate its little files that it needs in the config. Since probably just a good idea, like it often recommends that you go to app views layouts application .html.erb. That's your global HTML file that renders the whole like HTML and body tags. Since it recommends copy and pasting these things in, I may as well do that. So this is probably what you'd want to do for your real apps. To just get these notices and alerts on all screens. And you can see I just copied that from the little output message when I ran that generate devise install command. And the next I'm going to generate a user model, and as you saw from my schema, it was nothing really special. It's just a vanilla user, device user. So that will create the model and the spec if you wanted to test some stuff there. One thing you might want to test if you're doing this in a real app is to check it does like email validation, because we're going to want to be a bit more strict there, but I'll leave that as an exercise. To search for Rails, validate email. Gem there. Device gem already has a regular expression that it wrote, and so on. But because we've got this migration, I'll have to db migrate. When you migrate, one of the things it does, I've been noticing, is that it so there's no database. If you see this error, anyone know what you do? Yep, Rails db create. That's just an extra step that Postgres needs. So db create and then db migrate. So one of the things that it does is it updates the schema.rb. So it's often a good idea to migrate before you then commit, because it will update this little timestamp here to say, yes, I've ticked off, I've done this migration here. See, it matches the exact same timestamp, 1616, 1616. So with that created, gem installed, the user model created, and then migrated, I'm going to commit that. Add user model using device. So I think it's all, like, you've probably all done this at least half a dozen times, maybe even a dozen times. Only thing that I sort of did that was a bit different than usual was I actually followed the instructions to put these little notice and alerts in.
So those notices and alerts just be showing like admin, or they show?
So when you like in your controllers and stuff, we'll often have a redirect to and then like alert thing or a notice thing saying like users being successful, like model photos being successfully created, or oh, you can't do this or whatever. And this is just a one spot that will show them on all pages. Whereas what Rails does when it like scaffolds is it puts it in the scaffolded thing. It's a bit weird. So this is better.
So you take it out of the scaffold?
Yeah, I usually just take it out of the scaffold.
The tags that are sitting up there, do you just remove any formatting from them so they're not creating spaces?
Yeah, if you wanted to go a bit more further, you could add like an if statement here and so on. But yeah, just keep it simple. Also, device will use the notice and alerts when you like for the login forms and that sort of stuff, because it's done the better thing and not put it in its like its own views. So it wants them in the sort of global area, if that makes sense. Let's change there. So I'll just keep that page open because it's often good just to be able to like copy that line or whatever. But go back to our master plan. So we've got the users done. Next thing is the company. And here, instead of scaffolding, going to just do it the sort of long way, just to reinforce that. I think it was just a good opportunity to do that. So Rails generate model company, and then those two fields there, name and domain, which are both going to be strings, so I can drop the little colon string bit. Rails G model company name domain. So we're not going to scaffold, and that means we're going to have to generate the controllers and the views manually. So today's going to be partly revision, so sort of just doing things the more scenic route, and partly introducing a new gem called Pundit. So Rails G model company name domain. See, it's a pretty tiny generated bit of code. So it's got the migration, the model, and then the spec for the model. And if I have a look at that, I'm going to add one extra thing in my create companies migration. I'm going to say index the domain and ensure that that is unique. So what's that going to, by putting that at the database level, that's going to enforce that no two companies can have the same domain. So it'd be a bit weird if two companies could decide to take hold of google.com. Wouldn't seem very, would just sort of be, could lead to a lot of bugs and stuff.
Can you do that for anything that you've added? Like, for instance, you don't want the same phone number for a company or whatever?
Yep.
That's what.
Yep. Yeah, it's really quite handy, this.
Username.
Yeah, username.
Maybe you log in a website and you try to pick a username and it's already taken.
So just a little bit of you might have seen this version, add index. You can see there's no, that's not a method on an object like this T thing, it's just a standalone method. So you can do it that way. It's just that the add index one, because it doesn't know the table, you'd have to add that extra information. So they both do the exact same thing, but because this T is to do with this created table companies, it just saves a little bit of typing there. So there's just two different ways of writing the same thing. I think that's right. I'll just verify what I had here. Yeah. It's just flexibility. Yeah. So I think that's ready to go. I'll just check my previous one. Oh, here we go. Probably just added validation. So I'm just going to say that companies require a name. Seems to make sense. Well, here probably even makes sense just to say actually companies also require a domain. But that's sort of up to you. Maybe if you had Jim's Mowing and Jim's Mowing is back in the 90s and they don't have a website, maybe that wouldn't be applicable. But you could also, if this was like a real app, you could validate that domain as a website.com or like a domain looking thing with some sort of regular expression.
This isn't a real app?
I
thought we were building a real app.
Yeah, quite a few companies are using this now since I built it. Yeah. So I'll leave that as an exercise if you want. But otherwise, I'm just going to commit this, add company model. Split that? No. Let's see. I think Dash actually has a VS Code cheat sheet. Maybe. VS Code. Yeah. Go there. VS Code. Splits vertically. Yeah. Anyone remember the split vertically? Oh, okay. Command option 1.
It's a symbol.
Oh, how's that changed now? It was going the other way before. Oh. Oh. Come so far, just teaching me everything. I don't know how that icon.
Changing when you were pressing your command thing.
Okay. Wow. And it's not in that cheat sheet, I don't think. It's a bit.
I think that was like X code, not VS code.
Oh, there it is. Oh, no wonder. Anyway, I just thought it'd be handy to have the README at the bottom there. So you're going to have users, companies, so you've got the name and domain, and then the documents. So it could make a controller and stuff, like a page that lists all the companies. But again, you maybe don't want to let everyone know what companies are on your system. You don't want to sort of have that, I can't just go slack.com/companies and find out all the companies using Slack. So I decided that the functionality I really want to have user-facing is this document stuff. So I basically modeled the document next. Rails G model document. So a document's going to be owned by a company, so it's going to have the reference to the company that it belongs to. It's going to have a name, and it's going to have the content. So we'll just keep it simple, MVC, but you can imagine that over time we might allow file uploading or image uploading and make it a bit more advanced.
You have to roll your README up a little bit.
Which way?
Just the permissions.
Oh, but we're not there yet.
That's all right, just don't copy it in all the way.
Oh, okay. It's just in Slack. Browse G model document company name and content. So let's create that. Open that up. Create documents. The old Control P or Command P, and then just type create_doc. And so yeah, reference to company. We haven't got any custom sender or anything like that. So this is we don't have to change this true. We're happy with that. Be able to connect that to the companies table. The only thing I want to do is add an index, and I want to basically ensure that file or document names are unique. So you can't have two 2017 plan documents, because then users are going to be confused, like, well, which one is it? But we don't want to make it too strict. We don't want to have, okay, well, because Google created a 2017 plan, then therefore Tesla can't create that document. So what we're going to say is unique within companies. So to do that, we can have a nested index. So the first level is going to be the company ID. Then the next level is going to be the name of the document. And then I'm going to say that's going to be unique. So if we had something just like the name by itself, that means that once someone's taken that name, no other company can do it, but we don't want that. We want it unique across the company. That's what this allows us to do.
Does it matter which word you write the name in?
I don't think for this uniqueness, no. This is doing it this way is probably better if we want to have it like alphabeticalized, or whatever. So you could go to a particular company and sort the names in alphabetical order, because the index will be like the sorted index.
Sorry, but that's called, you said it's called a nested index?
Probably. That's just what I call it.
Oh.
Compound index. What does it call it here? Simple index, unique index, named index. Not sure, to be honest.
It's pretty common to have more than one field in an index. So
What would you call it?
the same index. It's so common to have more than one field.
Okay.
It's probably they don't have one field.
Okay. So I just think of it as nested because the sort of names is nested inside the company. Sort of like you've got a big phone book here for the company, and then each company has its own phone book for the names. So I think let's check this other one that I have here. Create companies, there we go. No, create documents. Yep. So that's then ready to migrate. And so I'll just add a commit for that. Add document model. So because I'm going like slowly and not using scaffolds, I'm sort of doing piece by piece. I'm also doing my commits piece by piece. I'm not going, okay, create the model, then create this controller and views, and then this huge mega commit. Just doing it a bit more slowly.
Is that how we should be doing it?
I think so, because there's sort of like, like a game, like checkpoints in the game. So if you sort of got this little, safe spot you can return to.
Patrick, are there any advantages when you do a model to like not fill it out, like especially like a minimum viable product, like to not have company name, you know what I mean? Like I know you teach us to plan it all out in advance and have all this, but is there any reason that you wouldn't and you'd add them later?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you want to keep it sort of just lean, yeah. What I've shown you sometimes before is that we'll go sort of to town here. We'll have the phone number, and so you'll plan it out with everything that you can sort of dream of.
Okay.
But then you'll say, well, for MVP, maybe all we need to get this sort of functional was just these two here, and then we'll leave all this extra stuff for later. Fax number and address and so on.
The other point is you might not know.
Yeah.
So you're not measuring, you're not checking, so you might find out you don't need it. You created all this extra.
You can scaffold on top of it. It expands from
What's that?
your scaffold.
Oh yeah.
And then you got all the extra fields that you got to get rid of in all your scaffold.
Yeah. It's just like we don't
Then
we
reverse
think
it as well.
we need to phone number, we find out later on we just don't ever need it.
And plus, like if you like sort of analyze this, you go phone number, fax number, address, or whatever. Let's just kill fax number. That's a bit silly. Phone number and address. Like you're gonna, well, which office are we talking about? Are we talking about the Google in Sydney? Are we talking about their headquarters in the US? Or it's too complicated. So that's easier. So we've got this all working. So the next thing I'm going to move to is to seed it with some data. And it was fair bit of typing for me, so I might just pull this one that I created earlier. So what I did was create 5 companies. That was, leading tech companies. And so each one has their own name and domain, of course. And I put these in variables because then I'm going to create certain documents for each of them. So this might just take a little bit of typing out. So yeah, SpaceX, Tesla, Apple, Google, and Amazon.
Paste it on Slack.
Well,
I second that.
well, I'll type it out. I'll type it out again, and I'll see how let's see how hard this is. Company, create, name. You should be getting close to the point where you don't need to go, oh, did they put a comma there, or did they do this? You should be able to go, okay, we're creating this SpaceX company, and it's going to have a name and a domain. And I can probably figure a lot of that stuff out without having to refer to the exact code that's on the screen there. So what I'd do here, which is probably what I did originally, is I'd create that first line, and then just copy and paste it 5 times. And then just use the ability to double click on words and just change that. So space, delete that, delete the X, and then punch that stuff in, space X. So if you double click, it will select the word. If you double click and then hold down shift and then double click on the other bit, it will select both the words and anything in between. So delete that, tesla.com. There we go. Yeah. No, sorry, what? Oh yeah, so yeah, you can just we'll just do that, just do that for you by default. So like in our views, sometimes you'll see link to, and it's like click me, and it's the sign up path. You can do that, right? And so you're used to seeing without the parentheses there, and it's just the exact same thing here as well.
It's just that Ruby lets you use brackets. Ruby, probably they prefer you not to Ruby.
Oh.
Full structure.
Yeah, there we are.
If it becomes more readable as well, you don't have to do all those characters. Like when you write a book in English, you're not writing with squiggle flex everything. You know what I mean? You're just writing what you want. That makes sense.
So
it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
So you can, if you want to, you can put the parentheses for calling the method and passing along an argument, and then the key value pairs, you can wrap that in a hash. And sometimes you do have to add those in because Ruby will sort of be a bit ambiguous for Ruby. But here it's just able to work this bit out. 2 key value pairs. Okay, that's a hash. You're passing it to this thing here. Okay, it's a method call. So these 2 lines do the exact same thing, but you can see this top one's just a bit cleaner, and
Is it when you say Ruby does it, do you mean Rails does it? Or can you do that in Ruby?
Yeah, this is the Ruby. This is just, yeah, Ruby just allows you to do this. We probably don't show you that we like, especially not to begin with, we didn't show you this as much because it was just like, we wanted you to, you sort of see how it's working more, whereas this is like a bit of magic. And it's just, it was just like, oh, if we show you two ways, people are just going to get really confused. So, but now's the time. now's the time to get really confused. So created those companies, and then I'm going to loop through each company. So SpaceX, Tesla, Apple, Google, and Amazon. I want to create a bunch of users for each of them. And so I just chose some random names: Sue, John, Mary, and Arthur. And so we're going to say that there's a Sue at SpaceX.com, a Sue at Tesla.com, Sue at Apple.com, etc. And so by looping through here, we're able to do this. We've got these, go through each company name, and then go through an array of generic people's names, which I call username. Then we create a email for that particular user. So it's going to be, say, John at, and then Tesla.com. Punch that company's domain in, and then we're going to create this that user model. So we're going to have a whole bunch of users in our system. And the password here, you can just do password or example or whatever. So this, by looping through twice, we're going to create 5 times 4 users, so 20 users. And I'm purposely just doing the password as something memorable, because then I can just log in as any of these users and sort of see what they can see. Why use the parens here? Not really sure. You could just do that, I guess. Yeah. So that's our users, and then we want to seed some more stuff. And that's going to be some documents. I'll maybe just cut that first one out. So we're going to create a so create top secret documents that only that company can access. So here we've got this example document, 2018 plan, and the content, all I just said was punch in the name of the company. So Google's plan for the year 2018 ... And so we're going to create that company and that document, and that document's going to need the company, that name of the document, and the content. So you'll have to note that this is indented by one level. This is inside the .each loop for the when we're looping through each company, because we need access to which company. So we're going to, again, 5 companies, so we'll end up creating 5 documents for each company. So that's one document. It'd be nice just to have another one. So here I tried to make it a bit more interesting. The name of this document is going to be the next big thing. The tech press are often obsessed with what's going to be hot next. And so what I did was listed a whole bunch of trending technologies, and then I had a bunch of different mediums. And so the big thing is that thing, so say wearables, and then 4 cats. So it's going to randomly select one of these from this list here, and then randomly select a medium. And we're going to come up with our genius idea. And so the name of the document is going to be the next big thing, and the content is going to be the next big thing is something only, say, Google can do, wearables for cats. And so we're going to create that document. So there's enough in here to probably make a typo. So just as people are finishing up, I'm now going to share that in Slack. Well, I think it's good to type it out, because if I just dump this, people are just going to go, oh, there's that seeds file. Copy, paste, no idea what that says. So I think it's good to go through it a bit. So does everyone get this sample thing? So sample is a method that's built into Ruby. So we go Ruby docs, sample, chooses a random element, or if we pass a number, n random elements from the array. So if we have numbers 1 through 10, sort of like pick a number. And so dot sample randomly chose 1 and it chose 7. So it's just a really nice way to be able to have a list of sort of possibilities and just to pick one of those possibilities. And here we're just doing it twice to sort of match up 2 random things together. So I think that's ready to seed. This is further down the road. Save that. Rails db seed. And you'll know that seed worked because it won't tell you anything. It won't have any errors. So if we just want to sort of see what we've created before we get to our controller and our view, I'm just going to do Rails console and then document.all, and I should see a whole bunch of documents there. That work? Oh, it's truncating it. Oh, it's a bit weird. Document.first. Document.last. Yeah, it's still there. So you can see all those great ideas there. So if everyone's got that working, so if you're able to do something like document.last, and then that document get its content, that means it's seeded properly. So I'm going to go back. So you can play around with Browse Console if you want to have a look at that stuff. Actually, I'll just go, okay, let's just look at the companies. Company.all, you can see all the information there as well. Tesla, tesla.com, Google, google.com, so on. And user.all, you should see a whole bunch of users there. So here we have Sue at SpaceX, Sue at Tesla, John at Tesla, Mary at SpaceX, Sue at Apple, etc. So that's a good point to commit. So I'm going to add seeds for companies, users, and documents. Yeah.
In Rails console, like you've seen tutorials and stuff, people will do like users got connection, like they use a connection to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, have you ever heard of that?
No.
I'm just curious if you know what that is for.
Okay, no. So if we've got that far, anybody got any issues? Okay. So I think it's probably a worthwhile exercise to have typed that seeds.rb out, but just to be sure, probably just copy and paste it in the end because I know mine's going to work. Sorry, what's that? Oh, okay. So I'll just commit this to GitHub, and then maybe we'll just take a break, and then we'll continue on after the break. So come back at 11:10. So right now I've got the lower level of our app worked out, the database and the models. However, our user can't interact with anything. That's because we need controllers and views. So I'm going to create a controller now. There we go. Documents controller. So controllers are usually plural if they manage a collection of objects, so like a collection of models. It's going to be documents. And we'll kick it off with an index and a show actions. We won't go the whole CRUD again because we'll work out this bit and then do that as a commit. So Rails generate controller documents and index and show. And then I'm going to go to my routes. And it does this weird, when you sort of scaffold a controller, it does these weird routes, get documents slash index and get documents slash show. You almost never want those. So I'm just going to delete them and redefine them. So yeah, resources, documents, and because I've only got index and show, I'm going to say only index and show. And so if we run Rails server, we should be able to visit our app at /documents. Oh, what's it complaining about? Yeah, I was just going to leave that for a bit. Oh, address and use. Huh? Yay, on Rails. Documents, and then there's our generated index page. So now I've got routes set up for /documents and then /documents with an ID tacked on the end. If you ran Rails routes, you'd see those. Here. So what would be nice is that this is our app. So I want to make the home page the documents. So I can say root goes to the documents, controller, and the index action. So Rails routes, root or root path, it's going to go to documents index. You can see that there. That means that we'll no longer have the happy people dancing around the world. We'll just have our documents controller as the home page. However, we've now got two different ways of accessing the documents index. You can go to the home page or you can go to /documents. And so it's a little bit strange. So this might be a bit confusing, but I'm almost wondering whether I should show it or not, but let's just go ahead anyway. So this /documents that points to documents index, that's generated by this resources documents only index. So I'm going to disable that. So it's going to be only show. And so if we want to access the index, we have to go through the home page, the root. And then I'm going to say, if you do visit /documents, I want that to redirect to the home page. So now there's only one way to access the documents, that's on the home page. And if you do happen to access this other way, we're going to say, no, actually you should be on the home page. Browse routes, it should be a bit cleaner. Oh, here we go. It's even got the redirect there, it's pretty nice. So that means if I go to /documents, you'll notice that it changes the URL to the home page. So now there's only one way to access the index of the documents. But I'll admit that this code here is a little bit confusing. But that's as far as we'll go with it. So resources documents only show, not index, because if we did index, we'll go, yes, I'll handle /documents. we don't want to do that because we're going to handle it manually. We're going to say when we get /documents, we're going to redirect to the home page. And our home page is then going to be the thing that does the index of documents. So it's sort of up to you which order you put these in. Maybe that makes sense. Anyway, that might be just a nice trick if you want to have the home page set as something. So our home page isn't doing much. Our index page isn't doing much. So we're going to go to the documents controller and actually load in the documents. So to begin with, I'm just going to grab them all. At documents equals the document model.all. So that's that document model that we generated before the break. And then our view is pretty dumb at the moment. So our view app views documents index.html.eib. I'm going to say top secret documents. And then I'm going to walk through this collection of documents that we have here. At documents.each do, and I'll call that thing document, and then we'll display each of those documents. So if you forget what attributes or columns that your model has, you can check the migration or use that plugin that Glenn showed. So from memory, we have the name and the content. So I'm going to say h2, punch in the document.name. And let's just preview that. Let's just see if that works to begin with. Is that big enough for everyone? So if I just quickly look at what that would do, now we're going to have this big list of all the documents. H1 top secret documents, and then we're looping through every document in the system because we said document.all. So we'll display a bit more information. I'll display the company. So I'm going to say document.company to get the relationship there. And then each company has a name, so I can just display that. And I'll put that in an H3. So now when we look at that, we're going to see, okay, 2018 plan for SpaceX, next big thing for Tesla, and so on. So, yeah, it's able to load the data and present it, so tackled that problem. But the issue is that we need to add some more control here because we're not even signed in and we can see all the secret documents of every single company. So the first thing I'm going to do is check here in my index section. If the user is signed in, then I'm going to allow them to do this. Otherwise, they're not going to get anything. And we'll whittle this down to the actual company that the user belongs to later on. That,
Signed or signed in?
oh, signed in. No, signed. Yeah, not user signed in. Signed in. Yeah. So devise adds this method so your controllers can use it. Also adds it so your views can use it. So I'm going to add it to my view here in index, indent all of that. So if we're signed in, we're going to display the documents, and here in the controller, if we're signed in, we're going to load the documents. Maybe we'll just keep it like that. I'll change my mind there. So that means, because we're not signed in, we'll see nothing at all. Yeah. Why do we need to do what, sorry? Need to do both? Or if we didn't have this one down here, it's going to blow up because the documents variable doesn't exist. So we'll try to do nil.each. We can also have an else here and display a message, but we'll just keep it simple like this for now. So let's try and make it a bit easier to sign in. We need to add some sign-in links. And to do that, I'm going to create this extra view here. And so you might have seen in some tutorials and guides and stuff that you can have a shared directory in views. That was the old Rails 3 way. There's a slightly different way in 4 and 5. You can have an application directory here in your views. And so these little HTML.erb things can be shared across all the other views. So we're going to create one that's shared for the for the user's information. So if they're not logged in, we're going to have like a sign-in link. If they are logged in, we're going to show their email address, the company that they belong to, and a sign-out link. And this will appear on every page. So going to create in my app views directory a new application directory. I'm going to create a new file underscore user info.html.erb. And it's got an underscore in front of it because it's a partial. It's not the whole sort of template. It's just a partial thing that other templates will then use.
How is this different from the layouts?
You can put it in there as well. This is just the way they've seen recommended to organize it. So.
That means that with it being in the application file, you don't have to do it when you're referring to it. You don't have to worry about going / application.
Yeah, you can just go user info.
Okay.
Yeah, just picks it up.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty clever.
With layout.
So this is just like any other sort of view. We're going to basically say if we're signed in, or if the user signed in, we're going to do one thing, else we're going to do a different thing. So if they're signed in, I'll just start it off with just a dumb div that just says, that shows up the current user's email address. Else we'll have a link to sign in. And so how do I know what the sign-in link actually is? I can just search the device docs or just Google device sign in, or I can run Rails routes, try and find the right action. It looks like it's they call it a session, so it's going to be the device sessions new, and that corresponds to the new user session prefix here. So I'm going to say new user session path. And that's basically the sign-in page. You can even see here get/users/sign-in. And I guess since we're here, we'll may as well add a sign out link as well. It's in that same list. So destroy user session, that's the sign out. And instead of being a get request, so get is something that the user visits, it's a delete request. So link to, we're going to say sign out. It's going to be the destroy user session underscore path and method delete. You can see that corresponds to device controller or device/sessions controller and the destroy action. So that's one way to get it, or the far easier way is probably just go device sign in links and it gives you all of them to copy and paste. This one here, part of their guides, there's the sign out or log out method, there's the login method. So it's pretty much the same. Destroy user session path, destroy user session path, new user session path, new user session path. So if they're signed in, we're going to show their email address and a link to sign out. Else they're not signed in, so we're going to allow them to access the sign in page. And so I want to plonk this on every page. And so I'm going to go to my application.html.erb. That is what's on every page. And I'll put it just right at the top of the body. Punch in render user underscore info. So what that does is it looks in usually the current directory, and if we can't find there, then I'll go to the application directory. And so because we've got this user info there, we'll find that file easily. So you render user info, and it'll basically just run all this code and display that on the page. So if you do that, you'll get something like this, sign in link at the very top of the page. Document is nil.
So because I'm not signed in, it's not declaring variables, so it's not.
Yeah, do you have an if statement on your signed in, like the index?
I just did something really stupid.
No, that's all good. So partly adding this stuff to allow it to make it easier for us to sign in and sign out and stuff, like to check check the app as different users. Also making it so we can sort of see, okay, we logged in at sue@amazon.com, and so we've got that sort of context there. So then we should be able to go, okay, I should be only able to see Amazon documents. So it's sort of like a little like a panel on the page. So underscore user info in app views, and then a new directory application. And then render this on the every page, application.html.erb in layouts, app views, layouts, application.html.erb. So go. Which one? So you're going to sign in. Don't need to sign up because we've already got all our different users when we seeded them. So I'm going to say sign in at Sue at SpaceX. We created that user and the password was example that we generated there. And so we've signed in, and then you can see we've got this partial rendering out the something else. Her email address, a sign out link, the old, just the message when you sign in, and then a list of all the documents. And then you should be able to sign out as well. But what I want to be able to get to next is to work out what company Sue belongs to, and then only display the documents for that company. I shouldn't be able to see Tesla's and Apple's and Google's plans. So this is a good spot for a commit, so I'll add this here. I think I'll do each bit separately. So the user info, application. So add user info to all pages, and then add documents index. And I'll push that up, so you'll be able to access that code in the challenges directory. So I pushed it up to GitHub. So once that's done, you should be able to open that link, and you'll see those two latest commits. So there's the one that we just did, and there's the documents index page. It's not coming up. Are you signed in, or? It should do. Yeah. And then, is that saved that far? Mhm. Oh, you're missing an equals with your link to sign in. Yeah.
What's an equals between friends and then?
Yeah, that's all right.
That won't be the first time, or the last time.
So, what I want to work out then is work out what company Sue is part of. So I can look up companies by their domains. So it's going to be a two-part problem. I need to work out what Sue's email. Then I need to work out the domain of her email. Then I need to find the company with that domain. Comprendo? So we're going to go to the user model and add some nice methods here to access that information. So the first one is going to be the domain. It's going to do that extraction from the email address. So anybody got any suggestions here? How would we get that domain from the email address? Regex, yep. Yeah. It's GIF. No. Yeah. What's that? No, because but that's what will end up running. But how do we implement that extraction of the getting the domain information? Yep. Yep. So we'll get something. We'll have something like email will equal something like sue@spacex.com, and then what we want that to output is the spacex.com part. That's the domain. So what we can do is split that. So get the email of this user. So user will have the email. So you either write that as email or self.email. Get that email and split it at the @ sign. And then we're not interested in the bit before the @ we're interested in the bit after the @ So email.split.last. So we put here so this is something, if you wanted to sort of verify, you could use RSpec to sort of validate that. If I create a dummy user with this, I would expect the domain of that user to equal this. Maybe I'll just do that. So I'll open this down here. So it does or should, let's just say should extract out domain from email. So this is in my user spec, so it's control P user underscore SP or spec, and I'll bring that up. So do this if you feel like just want to sort of learn this extra bit. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a dummy user, user.new email is sue@spacex.com, and we'll probably want us just to put a password there just so it's valid. And then so I'd expect that if I ask that user then what its domain is, I'd expect that to equal, is it EQ or equal? I can't even remember now. to equal SpaceX. So that's just a way to verify this logic. I've just written this code. Who knows if it works? So if to do TDD, we would first not have that implemented. We would run our specs. Really running out of room here. Our spec. I'd expect that to fail because our domain method is just going to return nil. That's this one here. Looks like something else is complaining there. Oh, it's just our show page, I think. And if I then implement that, it should then pass. EQ, I think. There we go. So that's then doing its job. If I did the wrong logic, so say if I got the first part, it should also fail. Yep. So give it the right implementation and it's going to do its job. I won't show it on the projector, but after we're done, I'll just fix up these specs as well, so you'll have access to the valid specs on GitHub. Imagine this one here, the index is going to be failing because it's not at /documents anymore, it's on the home page. We'll probably just have to tell it, hey, talk to the home page. And here we just haven't implemented the show page yet, so it's not going to work at all. So you can see how the TDD can help us validate that this is actually doing its job. And if you wanted to be thorough, we could go bob@apple.com and we'll expect that to equal Apple. So give it a few different scenarios and we'll expect that all to work. So that's where TDD is actually helping you. So next is that we've got the domain. So then we want to, well, let's just extract that out. Another way we can sort of validate that or verify that is just to display that on our little user info part here. So I'm going to punch out and say current user dot domain. So I've added the current user is going to be of class user. We've said, okay, class user, you've got this new method, domain. So now I should be able to go current user.domain, and I'll call this logic using the current user's email. So then we should be able to see that on our page here. Stuart@spacex.com and spacex.com here. So probably just to make this a bit more valid, I'm just going to quickly change this to a DL. And say DT here, email, change this to a DD, and then DT domain, and then DD there, so then it's just a bit clearer. Okay, email and domain, so we sort of know what we're actually looking at there. So that gives us the domain, but what we really want is to then go to the next step and get the actual company. And fortunately, all the companies have this domain field, this domain attribute, so we can just easily find the company with a certain domain. So to get the company, so I'm going to say, okay, user model, we're going to have a method to conveniently get the company. And it's going to use the company model find by where the domain of that company is equal to my domain, self.domain, or you could even just do domain. So that's going to call our domain method here, which is then going to ask the email and extract that bit of information out. And here we've got a way to conveniently get the company for that domain. So you can see how you sort of build up in little pieces. First, tackle how do I get the domain, then how do I tackle get the company using that domain. So then I'm going to display that on my user info as well. DT company, DD, and then punch in current user.company, and then .name, like that. So they'll get the company object or company record, and then that record will have the name attribute. So we should be able to see, oop, undefined method. Oh, I didn't save it. There we go, company space X. So it's able to actually find that bit of information. Anybody got any questions there? So we could have done the join table way and actually explicitly said, okay, this user belongs to this company, but we've instead to do a bit of smarts and just base that on the email address instead. And that means we just have to do this stuff, literally the smarts, just with a bit of logic here. So you can write self.domain, or otherwise you just even go just domain like that if you want. I think the self though can make it a bit more explicit what's actually going on there. So if I signed out, logged in at sue@amazon.com, you should see amazon.com here, and company is Amazon. So just try signing in, signing out to different companies, and you should see it's doing all the smarts. However, the next thing we'd want to then do is actually, okay, if I'm logged in as someone and they're part of this company, I should only be able to see that company's documents. I shouldn't be able to see these other ones here. But before I get there, there's sort of a bit missing. I would just like to implement this show page, so we'll just do that next. So we can click on one of these links or go to the individual page for that document. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the documents controller and just implement the stuff that you'd use for a show page. So it's going to set instance variable at document. It's going to say document.find, and then the URL will pass in the ID. So I'm going to grab that URL using params, find the document, and store that in an instance variable document, which the view will then use to extract out the information from. So yeah, this line here. But just cut that out. Probably just want to, oh no, I can probably safely do this. I'm just going to commit that as two separate commits. So this one can be extract company user. Work at company from user's email. And I'll push that up. So back to the show page. Show action will talk to the model and find that right model that we're looking at. And then on our show page for documents, we're going to display that. So in the H1, I'm going to just punch in the document.name. Then I'm going to have a paragraph with the document.content. And then I'm going to I can't access these show pages unless I punch in URLs manually. So I'm going to want to add to my index a link. So I can say the document name here. That will link to that particular document.
I haven't looked at the show page.
Yep. So if you implement all of that, you should see blue links on your top secret documents page here. And you should be able to click on them and go to say SpaceX's 2018 plan and see this information here. And I should be able to visit any of these. Tesla's new idea is streaming video for cats. Apple's next thing is wearables on a remote island. Should be able to see access all these individual things. So we're able to sort of visit everything, but now we want to lock it down. So Sue should only be able to view SpaceX things here. And the next level we want to be able to do is if they somehow get the link to say Tesla's 2018 plan, document /3, they shouldn't even be able to visit that at all. So we'll tackle the whittling down the list of documents here first. Before I begin though, does anyone still need to just catch up to this point here? I'll just, may as well make this a commit here. So add documents show. So first I'm going to get the company that the current user has. So I've added that def company method. So now we're easily just able to get the current user's company. You just want to delete line 4 there. Got that twice. Yeah, just delete all of line 4. Yeah. And now you've got 2 if signed in, so you just delete the second if signed in. Yeah. And then that end as well, because that was for the if statement. Yep. Yep, that's better. So how would I get the documents for that company? Find by will work, but find by only returns one result.
You should sort of go create a new variable and say find documents where the
Yeah. So if we look at the sort of low level, documents has this company reference. So you'll have a company ID at the actual database level. So we could do document.where company ID is equal to this company's ID. And that will get all the documents that belong to that company. Or what's the more Railsy way of doing it? So by doing the references and the document having that belongs to company, then we can just think of it in terms of just objects. So we can say where company is equal to this company. It's quite natural then. Document where the company is this company, which is the company of the current user. So Railsy. If you have has many there, yeah, but we haven't got that there. So doing these 2 tweaks here means you should be able to go to that page now, and it's only going to show me the SpaceX documents. So user signed in, email, work out the domain, work out the company. Because we've got the company, then we can work out which documents belong to that company and only show those. So that seems a bit safer, seems to be living up to its name, top secret documents. However, there's an issue, so we can visit these. So SpaceX's plan for the year 2018, blah, 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 or SpaceX's next big thing, AI and hovercrafts. But the issue is that we're still able to go to /document/3 and I can look at Tesla's stuff, or I can go to Apple's next big thing or Google's next big thing. All I need to know is just guess the little ID number here and I can access other companies' documents. So even though I'm part of SpaceX, I shouldn't be able to just hack the system basically and access Google's big secrets. So this is known as authorization. Are you authorized to access this stuff? And so there's some gems that allow you to control this. So before we get there though, is everyone up to this stage? That's a better question to ask. So to do this, we're going to use this gem called Pundit. Google Pundit gem, and you'll find it. Minimal authorization through OO design and pure Ruby classes. Yeah, you could do it manually. Yeah, and blow it up there if the. But this sort of just allows you to do it in an easier way.
Yeah, but then add document stuff fine. So you narrow the pool
You just go.
from index. So when you copy thing from index, yeah.
You just go if the document.company is not equal to the current user's company, then do something bad. You know. But this gem does that for you. So. Yeah.
That seems like a fairly simple method of logic to implement.
Okay.
Is it insecure? Like, does the gem do it more secure than adding that?
This makes it more convenient, and then we'll show you some more advanced stuff. So you could say certain people are allowed to view documents, but they're not allowed to edit them. So it gives you lots of control like that. Yeah, Pundit does.
But it's essentially doing the same method.
Yeah, you could write your own if statements and stuff, but it just makes it a bit more natural, hopefully. So does everyone, first before we begin, does everyone see the big security hole? We're not living up to our name, secret documents. But if I guess the URL of a particular document, I'm able just to visit it. So it doesn't seem very secure. So we're going to use this gem to implement what's called authorization. So authentication is signing in. Authorization is like in the movies where someone's trying to access those secret FBI files and it says access, your clearance is not that level. So you're not authorized to access that document. So authentication is logging in. Authorization is saying what you're allowed and not allowed to do. So gem Pundit. So gem file. Add that to that there. Bundle install. And then we want to hook Pundit into our system. So our application controller, which is what all our controllers then subclass. So we look at documents controller, you see it subclasses from application controller. So whenever we generate a new controller, it's going to subclass that. So we've got this sort of central point where we can hook in. So application controller. Going to add this line here, include capital P Pundit. And it adds some convenience methods to authorize stuff.
I like how you described that central point. It's very hard when you it's parent and all that sort of stuff. I think central point is just a nice way of describing it.
Thanks. So just following their instructions here, fortunately it looks pretty similar. Application control, action controller base. It's literally exactly the same in this guide here. And then it says optionally you can run the generator, which will set up an application policy. Policy is what's going to be what determines if someone's able to access something or not. So we're going to do that. Rails G Pundit install. And I'm just going to copy and paste that in. So that creates this new directory in app, policies, and then like application record, application controller and stuff, it gives us this sort of central point application policy, which all the other policies will derive from. So gem Pundit, bundle install, include Pundit into your application controller, and then generate the starter Pundit stuff. So after generating your application policy, it says to restart Rails server. So just remember to kill that off and then run Rails S again. So let's have a look at what that policies and application policy looks like by default. application policy, it's got two attributes, the user. So the user is going to be the thing that's going to be accessing our system. It's basically going to be current user. And what Pundit does by default is if there's a current user method, which device gives us, it will use that to work out who the current user is. So just automatically plug that in. And then the other thing is the model object that we're looking at, or the record. So it might be a document, might be a company, might be whatever, photo, whatever it is, it's going to be that particular thing that we're trying to access. The user and the object that we're looking at. And then we've got a whole bunch of methods that basically, like the CRUD methods, like all our actions, and it basically says hey or nay to whether we're able to access that. So here we've got one show, and then it's got this special thing scope, blah blah. So it's just got some built-in things. Here create, we're saying no, you're not allowed to access that by default, and chances are that whatever you decide for create, you're going to want to have the same logic for new. So new ends up just calling create. So if we want to control if we're able to create new things, we just override this method here. Same thing for updating. You can override it here, and edit page will just follow the same logic, so it just ends up calling whatever update does. So it looks a bit intimidating at first, but to actually get these working, it's not too hard. So what we have is documents. So I'm going to create a new policy here and call it document underscore policy .rb. And so there's a certain naming convention. So our model is called document. So we're going to call this class document policy, and it's going to subclass that generated application policy that we just looked at before. Whoops. Policy. So that generated policy just gives us nice defaults that would want, and that means that here it's a little bit leaner. So currently we're able to look at or visit any of these show pages for any document, but here we're going to override the show method, and it's going to return true when we allow them, false when we don't allow them. So we're able to then control that. So we have access to the record, or the document that we're going to be looking at, which is they call record, and we're going to have access to the user that's logged in. So I'm able to say if the user.company is equal to that particular document or the record, its company, then we're going to return true, else we're going to return false. Or if you want to be a bit leaner, you can actually just reduce that down to one line like so, because that ends up being true when that, if true, true, else, if false, false. You can just reduce that down to there. But we'll just keep it the long way because it's sort of a bit more like English. So if the user's company matches the document's company, then we're allowed to access it, otherwise we're not. And so because we've hooked in Pundit, all our controllers, including our documents controller, gets new functionality. And so here in my show page, once I've done @document, I'm able to say authorize this document, and it's going to find this policy, and it's going to know that we're in the show page, so it's going to call this method for us, and then work out if we're authorized or if the current user is authorized to access that document. If we are, then everything will continue as normal. If we're not, then it's going to show some sort of error. And it's literally just that one line, just authorized document. So for now, go to here. I'll just go to the home page. I should be able to visit stuff, so I should be able to go to the show page for SpaceX. Yep. And the other document that they have. But if I try to sort of be an elite hacker and go, haha, I'm going to get this error. Pundit, not authorized error, and not allowed to show. And so it's blocked me because I'm not part of that company. I'm not allowed to look at that document. So you can customize what actually happens when you get this, not authorized error. You can make it display something or whatever. I'll just leave that as an exercise. But this is actually just blocking people. You're not allowed to. You're just simply not allowed to access it.
Do you rescue or do you just redirect?
If you look at the docs, there's just a few choices there. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of stuff here. But I'll just keep it simple. So if I go to one that I'm allowed to, then it's perfectly happy with me. So yeah, you can see it's quite nice. Probably I could continue a bit. We could go to the edit page, just run through some stuff there.
Question.
Yeah.
To authorize that document, does it matter where it is? Like if you're doing stuff, I guess does it have to be on top of things that you don't want?
Yeah, probably as soon as I've found that document, I just want to authorize straight away.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that all the logic is run and then things are rendered anyway? So you're not gonna.
No, if this authorization checks the policy and it's not happy, it's just going to throw that error and it's not going to render anything.
No, that's right. Yeah, so
It's going to stop it in its tracks.
the rendering happens at the end of the method anyway, in a sense. So yeah.
How does it know which policy you're pointing it at? Let's say you have multiple policies and it's
Yep.
multiple show controllers.
Yeah, so it's just all based on the sort of convention over configuration. So it goes document, what class is that document with a capital D. So therefore I'm going to try and find a class document policy. And so there it is, document policy.
And because that's the show action, it'll look for a show action.
Yeah. Yep, so it just connects it all up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But there is, if you look at the docs, you can see basically what that does, that authorize. It's a shortcut for this thing here.
Okay.
But that's pretty ugly to write. But it makes it really nice. So I'll commit at that point. Add restrictions to showing documents when user is not part of. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's really well designed. If you look at the one where I think I
I
might.
might show it on Monday what you've done there, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
I might wrap it up soon because I think that, or maybe even
that's
have a
enough.
break.
That's
But
really
I've
enough.
gone like I went way further, so I added like custom permissions so people can be invited to particular companies,
Okay.
and then it's even like okay,
So what do you mean by permissions? Like,
well, there's a separate object here for permission, and then so if you look at the seeds, so you've got this freelancer, Joe Freelancer.
mm-hmm.
His domain's not going to match up with any company.
No.
So then a permission is created to say
Oh, so it's a separate
for this
table.
company,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, that's
this
all right.
user, and they've got write access as well.
Can write, yeah.
So this even goes one step further where
So
in the update,
in
it
order to
goes,
match with the company, is it an ID? Because I didn't see that seed. I'm guessing it's an ID.
So yeah, you just pass the company along there.
Yeah.
So it's just an ID stored in the
Yeah,
permission.
cool.
And another consultant, but they don't have write access.
Yeah.
And they gave an example here of Elon Musk. So he just wants to be able to log in with his email.
Yeah, I probably won't show all this because it's
Yeah.
like extended stuff.
Yeah.
But that's stuff for them to figure out. But it is
Yeah.
good to have that in the as like if they ever ask that question, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could make it a challenge, but I feel quite a few people might get stumped if they were asked to do this. But I'm not too sure.
I think a lot of them probably want to go through the discrete maths test tomorrow as well, so you've got that opportunity for them to study as well if they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a really good demo as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I still have to figure out how to. Should be able to figure out how to roll back in a seed if it doesn't. If it errors out. You could do it begin or something like that and roll back.
Yeah.
I don't know. There might be a way around.
Yeah. So that demonstrated that functionality. I did what I planned. Actually, went further. Went to editing and so on. Even went to a point here where you could have like a freelancer, and then they'll explicitly invited into that company. So freelancing.com doesn't match any company's domains, but he can be permitted to allow to access Google and Apple's stuff because he's a consultant. That's probably going to. Oh no, that might be just a bit much for people, but I might just share this anyway. Another example was like say Elon Musk. He has like 10 companies. He might just want to be able to log in with his email address and just access all of his company's information. He doesn't want to be going Elon at Tesla.com and then Elon at SpaceX.com. He just wants to have one email address that he can log in and access all of that stuff. So here's where you explicitly create these permissions. And so in your document policy, it gets a bit longer here. We just basically walk through all the permissions that user has and check if that permission matches that particular company that is the company of that particular document. So, but yeah, it gets a bit more complex here. But if people want to, I can walk through, say, doing the editing page and the form for that. Do that the long way. Yep, cool. So we'll do that next. So let's just build it the same way that we've done so far. Let's just build it out. It'll be insecure, and then we'll add the restrictions on afterwards. So let's push that up. There we go. So yep, we're going to work on the edit page for the document. So I'll need a new edit.html.erb. Let's make it reusable. So say if we got to a new form, we could use that as well. So I'm going to create this form partial here. So they're just blank, and then in our routes, we're going to want to say resources documents and include edits and include update. So edits the thing that displays the form, updates the thing that gets the submitted data from the form. So if we look at Rails routes, now we've got documents. I get slash documents slash the ID of the document slash edit. That's the edit page. And when the form is submitted, it's either going to do a patch or a put. Browsers offers that flexibility. Go to slash document slash ID, patch or put, and they'll all hook into the update action. So let's build our form here. So we're going to punch in with the equal sign form width. And because it's a partial, we're only going to have a local variable that we'll have to pass along. Form model document. And we don't want the fancy JavaScript stuff, so I'm going to say local through. And that's going to be passed. We're going to pass it a block, and we're going to have this f variable. We're able to display all our labels and our fields and so on. So the first thing I'm going to have, I'm going to give it this class form control. First thing's going to be the name, so f.label name, f.text field name. And then I'm going to copy and paste that just because it'll be easier to type. Next thing is content, and that content is text, so I'm going to make that a text underscore area instead of a text field. So whatever attributes are part of our document, we want to be able to edit them, so we have fields for each one. So if you had more, you would add more form controls here. But that's it. So then I'm going to finish off with the submit button. So f.button. Yeah.
What is the difference between the class form control and class field?
Oh, is it field control? I can't even remember what the class is, to be honest.
I think we use a couple, I think we call it class field.
Class field.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm just sort of matching what the scaffold thought. I thought the scaffold did. I thought it was form control. Yeah. Does anyone remember? I don't know. I mean, you don't even need the class. This is just if you want some basic styling. So we've made this thing a partial. It's because if we had a new page and an edit page, we could just reuse the same form. Just to save time, I'm just jumping straight to the edit. And so I want to use this form on my edit page. And so on edit, I'm going to say render the form. And what you think of as the local variable document is going to be at document. That's passed to me from my edit action. And probably just add like a little heading here, edit document. And then like a back button, so link to back, and I'll link back to that document, just its show page. And so we'll just need to hook up the remaining part, which is our controller. So just note that you'll need the % equals for these things to work, otherwise it will display nothing. So documents controller, we're going to have def edits, and it's pretty much just going to be the same thing as the show. Grab the ID from the URL, which will be stored in params, find that document and store it in that @document variable, which will then get passed down to our view, edit.html.erb. And so if we want to look at this edit page, it's just going to be one of these pages here, and then throw /edit on the end of it. And anyone know what the problem here is? Yeah, it's going to be @document. So that should work now. There we go. Edit document, name, content. Looks. I haven't used Bootstrap or anything, so it doesn't look that great. If you want a mini challenge, just try and work out how to make this page look a lot nicer. I've got one here I prepared earlier, so I might just steal that. I'll just quickly walk through. I used the built-in system font, so you can see there's a whole bunch of different fonts here. So I said body, just use that font. So there's Apple system font, Blink Mac system font, so that's for Safari, that's for Chrome. Segway UI, that's a Windows one. Helvetica, Arial, they're just generic fonts. And then here's some specialized fonts. So if those other fonts don't have emoji, we'll fall back to these fonts here for the emoji. I did some very quick responsive stuff here. I just said the maximum width is 40 characters, like 40 capital M's, and I centered it on the page. I said label, you can take up the whole width of the page. So display block means that name and the field won't be side by side. And then I just simply said an input within a form or a text area within a form. I also want you to be 100% width with these two rules here. So those very simple changes means that this will look just a little bit nicer.
Can you hit your back button?
Back button.
No, the back button.
Oh. So these are some simple tweaks, so I'm not harming your eyes. So I can share these. I'll just share these in Slack if you want. Otherwise, just use Bootstrap. So now I've got this form, name, 2018 plan, content, SpaceX is planned for the year 2018. If I try to change this, so like add these exclamation marks, it's not going to work because there's no update action on my documents controller. So I'm going to have to do that next. So I need to say def update. Again, we want to find the existing document that we're being asked to update. Then we want to have those safe params. So I'm going to implement that down here. Private document params. And so this will be extracting the information from the form. So I want to say params.require document at the first level. So the form wraps everything in this document key. And then the next level, we're going to say permit. So it's going to be a whitelisted params when we say permit. So we're going to permit to be submitted in the form the name and the content. We're not going to, so document has this other attribute, company or company ID. We're not going to allow people to specify that. Because then we could, say, aha, I'm going to make this document belong to Google now, even though I'm part of SpaceX. So that's our whitelisted, what we allow from the form, what attributes we allow from forms. If it's not in this permitted list here, it's not going to be allowed. It's going to be stripped out. And so then I'm going to try to update this document. So if at document.update, so if that was successful with these document params, I'm going to do something, otherwise I'm going to do something else. So this is the successful path. So document updates the record in the database. It will return true if it was, everything was happy. So in that case, we'll redirect back to that document's show page. Otherwise, we'll render the edit page, and if our form was showing the errors, all those errors would be shown there. So, success. Errors and form again. So now that means I should be able to go back, fill out this edit form again, update the document, and you can see it's changed it there. So that's the functionality implemented. So that works. I'll just commit that. Add editing. Oh, let's do the styles. Add basic styling. Add editing of documents. So you can get that from the challenges, the GitHub link there, get those particular commits if you want to compare your code. So that's that functionality implemented, but however, so we can't go to the show page, right, for that particular document. However, we haven't added any restrictions to the edit page. So I'm actually able to edit other companies' documents. So we'll have to authorize for those as well. So I'm part of SpaceX. I shouldn't be able to edit Apple's plan for the year 2018. So we've put restrictions on the show action, but we haven't put restrictions on edit and update. So to get that implemented, I'm going to jump to my document policy, which is in app policies document policy. And I'm going to say def update. It's going to return true when we're able to update it and false if we're not able to update it. And I'm simply just going to copy and paste this logic here. We're going to be able to update it if we're part of the company. If we're not part of the company, we're not able to update it. And then if we look at what application policy does, let's jump there quickly. You'll see that the edit as well just says, just do whatever update does. You say what update does, I'm just going to do the same thing. So that means we only have to do update and not edit here. You can add some comments here if you want. If user is belongs to the So that's our policy updated. The next thing is to enforce this policy. We have to still do that manually, but it's just a one-line addition. So we're going to just say authorize at document here. And similarly, in the second line of update, we're going to say authorize document there. So it's going to just verify that against its policy. And if we're not meeting what the policy requires here, that the user's company is the same as the record or the documents company, then it's going to blow up and not allow us to progress any further. So that means with these additions here in the policy and here in the controller now, authorize edit, authorize update, that I can no longer edit a document that is not the same company as my company. So that's totally locked down. Let's added these lines here, authorize. So that Pundit makes it really handy. It does the looking up of the policy and all of that stuff for us. Just leave that up there a bit longer. Anyone want to see the document policy? What that authorize method actually does. Where is it? It's just basically short for something like this. Finds the policy with the same name as that model. So document policy, creates a new version of it, passes in the current user, passes in that particular thing that we're passing. So we're passing a document, so it's going to pass in that document there. And then it checks the action that we're looking at. So if we're in the show action, it's going to say .show ? And if that is not true, so unless we're allowed to access this, then it's going to raise this error, which is error basically stops the app in its tracks, and so we're not allowed to do that thing. So that one line there, authorized post, is short for all this code here. Anybody got any questions? Is this confusing at all? Anyone a bit confused?
Why don't you have one for them edits?
Yep. Because this subclasses, we haven't really covered subclassing that much, partly because I don't want you to use it very much. But if we look at what our subclass, so these are basically base methods that we get in our document policy, because we subclass the application policy. So we don't have def edit here, but the application, our superclass, does. And it says just call my update method. So it's just going to be exactly the same is what we have here. So we get that for free. So we only have to override one method, which is this one here. Yep. So you can see here in application policy, just gets it's initialized with 2 arguments. And just to make it easy, you can actually create a custom initialize for each one. You can do something like this, because we're document. And so you go at document equals blah, blah, blah. And you have those 2 attributes. Like so. And that means we'd be able to go document.company and document.company there. But it's just the extra code that you have to write for each policy, just for that little wording change. So you can do that if you want and say, okay, I'm going to call that at document and attribute document. However, it's just extra code, so just to keep it leaner, you can skip all that extra code and just go, okay, I know it's a document, but I'm just going to conveniently access that with the record attribute instead. Because it's implemented all that in the application policy, which doesn't know what the model's called, so it just calls it record.
So what called initialize is
In,
that line where we said authorize?
Yep. So yep, you can see the dot new there. So we'll call the initialize, first argument the user. So we'll call current user for us, and second argument is the thing that we pass to the authorize method.
Okay.
Yep. The other thing you could probably do, I haven't actually tested this, you could probably go document and just go, okay, I want to give that a better name and just call record for me. And then you could just go document like that. But yeah. So yeah, that's that implement. I'll just show you one little, so let's just go add authorization for editing documents. Before we, like we're used to seeing the before action, right? And going set document. We're used to seeing that when we scaffold our code. So we can actually do that for this as well. Because we've got these common lines here. Show does at document equals document.find and authorize document. Edit does the exact same thing. And even update does the exact same thing. So this is a prime target for refactoring. This one method that we can just call and that just does the work for us. So here I'm going to go down to my private part here and say set document, just like what scaffold does. And I'm going to copy these 2 lines here. They're all the same, so it can be show, edit, or update. So set document's going to go use the ID that's in the URL, find that document from the database, store it in an at document instance variable, and then authorize that document. So you're used to seeing something like this, but we can just add that authorization step in one place as well. And so we want to call that method for those actions. So we say before action set document, call that method. And we don't want it for an index, so we're going to say only for show, edit, and update. Call this method before you end up running the actual method for that action. And so because that method's then been called, that means we can cut down this repeated code. We can go show, just make that empty. You're going to call set document for me, edit, same thing, and even update, delete the first two lines there. And then it's really nice and lean here. because all show was doing was exactly what's in the set document. All edit was doing was exactly what's there as well. And what update began with was these first 2 lines here as well. So we just want to run that before we get to the update action. And so that should still all work. Ooh. Oh no, so no, God, I was worried there. So I shouldn't be able to access a document that I'm not allowed to look at, and I shouldn't be able to edit a document I'm not allowed to edit. But one that I am allowed to edit, I can, or one I'm able to look at, and one I'm able to edit, I can. So that surgery was successful, but you can see it's just a bit leaner. And even if you scaffold, basically all you have to do is create the document policy where you say hey or nay to what the user is allowed to do. So return true if they're allowed to do this particular action, false if they're not. And simply in your scaffolded set photo or set whatever it is, just add this line here, authorize that thing, and it'll just work. And so it automatically detects, it automatically knows what action it's on. So if it's show, it will detect that. If it's edit, it will detect that, and so on. So it's pretty nice. So I'm just going to say refactor set up refactor set up is Anybody got any questions there?
Where would you set up, if someone doesn't have access, would you want to set it up so they get bumped?
Yeah, so yeah, at the moment it's just showing this weird error page. You can customize it here, blah, blah, blah. You can see it's got quite a bit of customizability. If you want to sort of customize not based on a record, like a model object, you can just go customize like the home page. Are you allowed to do that?
So that was my next question. You just want to, you don't have a model to deal with, you just want to ban from anyone from the page.
Yeah, you can do that here. Just whatever this thing means, struct.new. Not really sure to be honest, but you can do that. You can scope it, so you can actually even verify, like on the index pages, if they're allowed to look at those particular documents. I'm not going that far, but here you can see you just override this resolve method here in your policy, and so if we're an example, if for example we're an admin, we'd be able to see everything. If we're not, we've got a more limited scope there.
It's a lot nicer than
Yeah, it's really well done. So you can go to that level if you want to. I didn't because I thought it'd be just sort of a bit confusing. You've got ways to validate that all these safety checks are actually being called. So you've got this verify authorized. It basically just enforces you that you're actually calling this authorized method. And if you're not doing that, it'll warn you. So it's some safety there. Blah, 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 blah. You can generate a policy if you want. So in your application controller, here you're able to hook into when that not authorized error happens. And so it's saying rescue from, so just search for rescuing on the Pundit documentation. So you can say rescue from that error and call this method when an error happens. And then that method's going to say, I'm going to display an alert flash message. You're not authorized to do this thing. And I'm going to redirect you to either the page that the user was coming from, which you can access with request.referrer. So it's the previous page that they were on. Or if that wasn't not available, then I'll just redirect them to the home page.
Does anyone not understand that bit?
So maybe I'll just let's just implement this just so we see that in action. So at the moment, if I try to access something that I'm not able to access, I just get this sort of dumb error. Let's just make that a bit nicer. So this is an application controller. So in any controller, we're going to hook in here. And I'm feeling lazy, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. Rescue from. So when this error happens, the Pundit not authorized error, which is the one that we could see on that page, Pundit not authorized. Call this method, and then that method can sort out what to do there. And that method is going to display a message and redirect to either the previous page or the home page. Or I don't know why they don't do this. You can just go alert like that. I don't know why it doesn't just do that, but let's keep it as it was.
Is it got refer to something new? Is that fine, or?
No, that's been there for a while. It's just the previous page that they're on. It's just what your browser actually tells you when you visit a particular page, like click on a link, or show you the page that you came from. It's also how Google Analytics will know what site you came from. So if you click on a link and it takes you to like another website, if that other website has Google Analytics installed or one of those analytics systems, they'll be able to go, okay, I'm getting a lot of traffic from Facebook.com or from joesblog.com or whatever. It's the same sort of system.
If it's not in the browser, that's where you got the root path.
So let's just see this in action. Now if I go to this, I don't think I'll have to restart. Now if I go to this, something I'm not authorized to look at, I'm going to go to the home page and it's telling me you are not authorized to perform this action. So you could make that a bit more user friendly if you wanted to. And just to show how this works, if I sign in, what was it, John at apple.com, example, I should be able to see just the documents for that company, and I should be able to edit those. I probably want to add an edit link here, and not look at other people's or edit their stuff. Yep. Wow, it goes pretty far. You can, like, it's pretty advanced. You can even say what attributes they're allowed to edit. So admins would be able to edit more stuff than peons. Yeah, it goes pretty far. Pretty amazing. There's something that's not as advanced. Say if you had different logic here for whether in your policy for editing rather than showing, and you wanted to detect that and go and like show an edit link if they're allowed to edit it, but not if they're not allowed to. You can do that with something like this. If policy, where is it? If the policy of that thing that we're looking at, if they're allowed to update it or edit it, then we're going to show that edit link. And if that's false, then we're not going to show any edit link. So you can also handle your hiding and showing stuff there as well, which is pretty nice. So, got 1 more minute, I'll just quickly do that. So let's, on our show page, add this edit link. Link to edit. That's going to be the edit document path for @documents. And so if I go to the show page for something, now there's this big honking edit button there. But I only want to show that if the user is allowed to do that. So what I can do is say, okay, give me the policy for this particular document, and I'll plug in the current user. And if I'm allowed to edit that, then show that. If not, it won't show anything. So it's quite, I think that's pretty relatively natural. Like that's not too much of a mouthful there.
Pretty nice way because you go to one spot and you can see all your policies.
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
This central
couple of
place.
handles for your pages and things,
Mhm.
and controls and stuff.
Yep. So I think I got that right. So now I'm just going to show that edit button. But if I change my policy to make that really restrictive, so say if I just go right here, return false, and it won't run any of this code, I'm just going to say no one's allowed to edit it. It's going to hide that button. So I can go, you could go, if you had like a admin capability, you could say only admins are able to edit it, for example. You can just adjust that in the one place in the policy, and it's going to be reflected across your whole site. Yeah, I think there's different ways. You could just add an admin boolean, that's what I usually do, but there might be more clever ways as well. So let's go button to documents show. There we go. So we'll call lunch. So come back at 2 o'clock and we'll continue with your major projects.